Welcome to Realms Unknown, a science fiction and fantasy podcast brought to you by the Bugle. Gravine stood, surveying her body, rows on rows of her own body, perfect face, perfected by science and surgery as far as it could be perfected, flawless and reflected in 1,000 mirrors here in the bathroom of the most exclusive club in Alpha Dome. She applied lip gloss to the body, adjusted its hair, pulled at the edge of a fake nail that had started to loosen in its moorings. Fake nails were her least favourite part of the whole caravan of maintenance work. Fake nails and her dental veneers where they'd shaved her teeth down to little stubs and put on gleaming hats. For that she'd only had to deal with once. Nails were every couple of weeks, and as they fell off to reveal the sanded down nail beds, she felt ugly and naked and exposed. She pushed down hard on the loose nail but felt something give beneath her pressing finger, the bonds of the glue breaking perhaps, or perhaps something deeper under the skin. She drew the nail away, but it came with a string. Morbidly curious, somehow distant, she pulled the nail further from her finger, the piece of gristle unzipping her finger entirely, further and further down, her flesh unraveling from itself like a sweater being pulled, to reveal Realms Unknown! Yeah, that's right, you've just entered Realms Unknown, a weekly speculative fiction podcast brought to you by The Bugle, in which we discuss science fiction and fantasy tropes, the newest news, our favourite old shows, books, games, and more. I'm your host, published author and comedian Alice Fraser, and my companion on this journey, the Duncan Idaho to my Paul Atreides, the Yennefer to my Geralt of Rivia, the Jeff Goldblum as Brundlefly to my Veronica. It's Tom Neenan.
Hello! What an honour to be here. Thank you. I love Duncan Idaho. I love the fact that his name is so rooted in Earth in a series which is so spacey. It doesn't quite make sense, but he's so cool.
There was that very fun era of like high fantasy and sci-fi where it'd be like Jeffrey or like Fred on an adventure in like medieval Rome. It was, very fun. Our subgenre deep dive for the day will be bodies, science fiction and fantasy that does interesting stuff with bodies, and we'll get into that. But let's start with the news. Just one piece of news this week. Red Sonja is coming out later this week in US cinemas. I cannot wait to see the reaction. I cannot wait to see the movie. Apparently, the latest trailer shows her donning her famous bikini armor, but like reluctantly. Tom, what do you think about making Red Sonja be like ironically self-aware of how ridiculous her bikini armor is? Do you think she should not be into the bikini armor, or do you think she should be all in?
Right, so I know sort of the basics of this, but I know very little. And so I don't know whether we're approaching this in a kind of, is it going to be slightly meta? Is it going to be slightly sort of playing with that notion? Or is it a very knowing adaptation, basically, with its tongue firmly in its cheek? Or is it very sincere and going to do the original text sort of justice?
So I feel like this is a very difficult line to walk because part of the appeal of the original is it doesn't really have any ironic self-awareness.
Right.
And that is what's great. Like that's what's great about a good B movie is it's not winking at the camera. It's just all in on its own crapness. And there's something beautiful about that. And I feel like maybe we're a bit jaded about meta ironic sort of wink to the camera stuff. Or maybe it's just me, but I feel like what I want is a Red Sonja that just is like completely into it, like that she thinks her bikini armor is the greatest thing in the world, or she thinks she doesn't need to cover any other part of her body because she's such a good fighter that she doesn't need self-defense, or that she'll never get a seeping gut wound. I don't know. I'm genuinely conflicted, which is why I want to know how you feel about it.
I think it can work. So I haven't actually seen the trailer yet. That is something I'm gonna look forward to and dive into. But I'm excited about something which kind of takes on board certain problematic tropes and then also makes them work. I've got everything crossed.
Yeah, I think we should probably do a deep dive episode into it when it comes out, whether it's good or bad, because either way, I think there'll be a lot to talk about. Obviously, Red Sonja is in this odd intersection of female empowerment. She's meant to be an incredible warrior, sort of unparalleled, unbeatable, defeats men all the time, and yet also, very sexy and objectified and sexualized. And, the reason she's an unparalleled warrior is because some guys think that's hot in terms of the construction within a comic book universe, but also, you know, then she does sort of submit to Arnold Schwarzenegger in the original, but like because she wants to. There's a whole lot of really interesting stuff happening about female desire and male desire and the ways in which they intersect in the body of this Red Sonja lady. So I'm genuinely interested to see what the movie makes of it and how it navigates those extremely fraught shoals.
I just looked up, sorry, because I realized that I didn't actually know who was playing Red Sonja, and having searched her, I still don't. It is Matilda Lutz. I have not encountered Matilda Lutz before. I think she's a model, which would make sense. But yes, I don't know anything about her. So I'm going in quite fresh.
Yep, I am open to it, and
Mm.
maybe this is the non-ironic casting that I'm looking for, where they've cast someone who looks the part but cannot act. I think that would be delightful to me. Or maybe she's an incredible actress who's yet undiscovered and has been
Mhm.
given a big shot and is going to really blow our socks off and give emotional depth to the character of Red Sonja.
Could be a Mila Jovovich situation where Mila Jovovich kind of came from nowhere and was brilliant in The Fifth Element, and yeah, and sort of had a career playing basically the same part ever since. But I'm not complaining because she does it very, very well.
Yeah, it's an incredible thing that she's managed to be born sexy yesterday for like 30 years.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Your ad section now, because you can't be what you can't buy. Unwanted tentacles, accidental bird digestion, an identity crisis? We've all been there. Certainly if you've ever existed as an acidic semi-sentient slime being. And haven't we all? Try Basic Bitch Therapeutic Peels to remove the top levels of what we're all agreeing to call your skin. You've never felt fresher or more beautiful. Now get out there and absorb the world. Basic Bitch Therapeutic Peels, available online now. Acid effects can be minimized with half a glass of water. And this episode of the podcast is brought to you by Hairbud, the pet that is you. Are you a narcissist who also wants a best friend? Are you lonely but also hate other people? Just use a significant chunk of your own flesh and our patent-pending growth pod, and in 3 to 5 business weeks, you'll have a 2/3 size, wobbly, semi-sane clone that loves you unconditionally. It's like a dog if dogs were made of you and occasionally tried to reabsorb you into the hive mind. Germs and health conditions apply. Side effects may include the creature developing separation anxiety, which means it screams when more than 3 feet away from you, its owner god. Also, it knows all your secrets and is born with all the memories you've forgotten.
This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Life Sign Readouts. Have you got an entire team of people going somewhere dangerous and want to know if there maybe is some kind of life sign down there, or observe as your teammates slowly die? Why not download the new app, Life Sign Readouts? Find a mysterious other life sign that isn't your teammate, or watch your teammates slowly get murdered one by one. Life Sign Readouts, literally only there to make things scarier.
Well, it's a very good way to do a lot of murders happening without actually having to film the murders. Just having
Yes.
the lights are blinking off and everyone in the control room who you care about is like, oh no, the red shirts.
Exactly. They serve no other function. Who needs a thing which is just like, is everyone on my team alive? Okay, there's a light on. That's the only reason you'd ever need it. It's very weird.
But this is interesting because actually, I think reality has sort of slightly disproven the emotional effectiveness of this as a tool. That they're in the, they're in the control room, they're watching these lights blink off, and they're really feeling it in their hearts. But actually,
Mm.
my experience of watching small pictures of men on bikes approaching on a map on a delivery app of any kind,
Mhm.
when they go around the wrong corner, all I want to do is murder them. Like I would, it's that thing of they're completely dehumanized. They mean nothing to me. And then they come and they knock on the door and I'm like, oh, poor little guy. It's a human being with a real face. But up until the moment that I open the door to their face, I'm like, I could drop an anvil on you for being 5 minutes late, you head. And then you're like, oh no, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. You've ridden all this way, bringing me my stupid food. Like, but I just want, like, there's nothing more stark to me than the difference between how I feel about the little bike guy and how I feel about the actual guy.
So, well, that's the thing. It's so dehumanizing. It's a bike. It's not a little circle with his picture in it, is it? It's not. You're not getting a little like readout, or you're not making eye contact. No, it's a bike is bringing you your food, and there just happens to be a human attached for convenience sake.
Yeah. But I mean, really, the scene should be something like, the light blinks off and they're all like, "Oh, what a shame," and they're like, "Wait a minute, that was that was Dave." That brings us to what have you been putting in your brain,
Hmm.
Tom? What have you been putting into your brain this week?
Well, first of all, I'm espousing this as the greatest summer for horror, I think, in at the longest time, because you've got some amazing. I started out with 28 Years Later, which I think I've already discussed on this show, which
Hmm.
I loved. You then had Bring Her Back, which I thought was absolutely extraordinary. I loved Bring Her Back. I thought that was an amazing horror film. I then saw Weapons. Oh my goodness, where everyone's talking about Weapons. If you're on TikTok, every scene from Weapons has been cannibalized and turned into a did you notice this in the film Weapons. Anyway, it is non-linear storytelling. It is from the guy who brought you Barbarian before, which I really enjoyed as well. I like the fact that he has Justin Long as his little good luck charm, and it is funny, it is horrific, it is incredibly entertaining, and so I really recommend Weapons. And then I just saw Together, which is the Dave Franco, Alison Brie body horror film as well, which I think sort of it wasn't the sort of standout, but sits in that kind of that group of films that came out this summer and can hold its head up high because I think but it's sort of quite funny in some places, but mainly it's just a sort of a body horror bit of joy. It's gross, it's weird, and I really enjoyed it. So well done. I think if you like horror, this is the summer to go out and try and catch as many as possible.
Well, as somebody who cannot really watch horror,
Mm.
I'm just a real I'm very very affected by art, which is why I enjoy the Fast and the Furious movies because they don't get under my skin. If I watch a movie that's like really like heartfelt and meaningful, I'll be walking
Mm.
around in a daze for like 3 days, which is why I can't handle horror.
Mm.
But I also really enjoy the fact that there's a lot of Australian filmmakers who are coming
Yes.
through in this horror genre, in part because Australian filmmaking does not have big budgets. We don't get a lot of funding, and
Mhm.
horror is one of those places where you can get real bang for your buck. Because it is kind of, in a lot of ways, it's you can do a lot with very little, and that's part of the game for a lot of horror filmmakers is seeing
Mhm.
how much the filmmaking can do the work, and almost the more you see whatever the creature is, the less scary it
Yes.
is. So it
Mhm.
becomes about the filmmaking, the atmosphere, the soundtrack, the acting, the rhythm of the film, and the production, which then I
Mm.
think is sort of in many ways, and this is someone who does not like what horror, in many ways more pure filmmaking
Yes.
than your kind of everything on the surface, smash 'em up movie. Though I will always back the car ballet fight scenes in, Fast and the Furious.
Cool.
They managed to, like, do something that's completely nonsensical and you still sort of follow which car is going where, even though they're cutting every 1.5 milliseconds, really, that's an achievement.
Yeah, and they have that thing which is like the cars are an extension of the body of the driver, aren't they? You don't sort of adhere to any kind of physics other than if you sort of imagine the driver and the car are one, and they can do things like spin round in ways that would be absolutely impossible for like a 2-ton vehicle to do. I do love that.
It is a lot of fun, and that said, I have gone out of my way to read up on Together with, James Franco and Alison Brie because I knew our
Mm,
subject, for today
mm.
was going to be bodies. But I'm also gonna, talk about what I read this week, which was
Ooh.
Swordheart by T. Kingfisher, and it's a sort of a fantasy romance. It's very influenced, at least to my mind, by writers like Lois McMaster Bujold, who's one of my all-time favorites, in that it has a sort of a sensible and self-aware protagonist who's kind of getting about her business and not perfect by any means, just sort of a normalish person. And
Mm.
I'll just tell you the opening of the book and you can see if it's something that you would like. So she has inherited a bunch of money from her uncle, and the opening line is basically her contemplating how she's going to kill herself because her relatives are going to marry her off to her cousin who's awful,
Mm.
instead of letting her have this inheritance. So the inheritance has just brought a whole lot of trouble down on her. They're going to lock her in a room. And she's like, I just don't want to marry him. He has damp hands. And she doesn't really have any way to end it all except by there's a sword hanging on the wall, and she unsheathes the sword, and the sword turns out to be inhabited by an ancient warrior. And he's like, no, I'm honor bound to defend you against all your enemies, including your awful aunt.
Mm.
and helps her break out of this situation, and they go on an adventure. If you like
Oh
the
wow.
idea of that, and again, this idea that, just one of the things that really charmed me is they're running away at the beginning,
Mm.
and he helps her get over a wall, and she's like, I can't lift you up. How am I going to get you over the wall? He's like, just sheathe the sword and then throw it over the wall and I'll be fine. And so she manages to sort of hop him over the wall. So it's a really fun sense of the physical and also the mystical.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that a lot. So that's Swordheart by T. Kingfisher.
Fun. Oh, that sounds super fun.
And that brings us to Trope on a Rope, which is where we discuss a trope that we love or hate or love to hate, but we certainly notice it every time it comes up. What's your trope on a rope for this week, Tom?
My trope on a rope is befuzzled kings and the problems that they bring to everyone around them. Being a king doesn't seem to come with any kind of responsibility in terms of excellent decision making at all. So, yes, I am mainly thinking about King Theoden. I'm also thinking about, I know he's technically a warden or something, but Denethor as well.
Mm. Or Sleeping Beauty's dad in the Disney
Yes.
version.
Who, who just managed to go through life making terrible decisions, taking one look at Grima Wormtongue and thinking this is someone I should in any way trust with the work that I do, the advice that I have. Dude, it's on you. It's your fault. And also I think the dad in Shrek, played by John Cleese, is another example. He makes an awful decision where he's cursed to be a frog, and it's so many generations have to clean up the mess that these I know technically if you're in a fancy realm you're not a boomer, but it's boomer
Very boomer
energy.
coded.
Yes. Of just messing up and then having the younger generation have to come in and fix it for you. So my trope on a rope is befuzzled kings and the awful chaos that they leave in their wake.
I mean, your point about Grima Wormtongue reminds me of a thing that I used to say. It was a sort of a joke, but one of those jokes that's true about a character in the Sydney comedy scene. Let's call him Mr. Smith, and he was very supportive of particularly of all the young lady acts. And he would come to your show and he would offer to why don't you come down to my beach house and do some writing and things like that. Very, very kind. Also, he would rub his hands together and he would sweat quite a lot. And he was sort of significantly older, and then he would sort of put his hand on your shoulder and sort of massage it slightly.
Oh, no.
And I just thought, one of the nice things about being a woman in the comedy scene is we tend to give each other a heads up about people who are, potentially going to be a problem.
Yes.
But it's called the Whisper Network, and it's not entirely fair, but it's also, this guy's going to put your hackles up, so maybe just be a bit careful. But I always used to say you sort of really shouldn't warn someone against Mr. Smith. Because if you can't get past him, he's got a big red flashing sign over his head that says, "Don't get into a car with me."
Yeah.
He's your level 1 creep. He's your training wheels creep.
Yeah, if you need help, he's the in a video game, he's the tutorial section of being a woman in comedy.
If Grima Wormtongue, evil, hi, hands over his card, evil advisor written on the card, and you're like, sounds good.
Dude, you need help. You deserve everything that's coming to you and your kingdom. That is my opinion.
Yeah. Yep, all the Yelp reviews come from the same IP address. You're like, wait a minute.
I smell a rat here.
My trope on a rope for this week is a character looking in the mirror and then slowly pulling at something that then turns out to be a truly disgusting Cronenbergian horror or a jump scare. So as in our opening epic story that I wrote, just that thing where they're there's something in their eye and they pull at it and then, their head falls in half or something like that. That is a trope that genuinely upsets me every time I see it. Or they're looking in the mirror and then something is suddenly in the mirror behind them, which is sort of a thing that relies on the camera focus pulling, but that's not how your eyes work.
No. So yes, that is very much a cinematic technique and not a lived one.
Yeah.
Hair in the throat. I've seen a lot of hair in the throat. There's a Ring film with hair in the throat. There's hair in the throat in Together. Spoiler alert for that. I think it's because people can imagine it. It's horrible having a hair in your throat. And so,
Yeah.
yeah.
Quite offensive to the experience of cats. They're like, this isn't horror. It's just my life.
Yeah, day-to-day living.
And that brings us to our subgenre deep dive this week, which is bodies, science fiction and fantasy, which has bodies in it. We've been told we need to make this podcast more focused and less overwhelming, but if you like this subgenre, please go head over to our Blue Sky, realmsunknown.bluesky.blah blah, and have a look at the recommendations. Each week we put out the subgenre deep dive call out before the podcast comes out, so you get a little bit of a head start on it. And there's also just a massive recommendations list there on the Blue Sky and also over on my Patreon, which you can subscribe to for free if you just want to be part of this conversation. There's people recommending games and books and movies and anime and everything, and it's always just a great conversation about this. So if you want more reading, we can go into that. But I'm going to start with a recommendation for a body horror thing. Again, horror isn't the entire definition of this subgenre, but bodies in fiction are always really interesting and can be done very interestingly. I'm going to talk about Looper, which was the one with Bruce Willis back in the day. And in it, there's a thing where they play with the time slippage, and you can sort of carve a message into your arm for your future self. And there's a point at which one of the Looper assassins tries to escape, and his past self begins to be being tortured in the past by the people who are saying, no, we own you, you can't escape. The injuries that are being done to him in the past appear to him in the present moment as healed wounds.
Oh, wow. That's cool in a chilling way.
Yeah, so it sort of doesn't make temporal sense because obviously you would have noticed that your leg had been taken and maybe made different decisions, but it's this process of the man running away as pieces of his body sort of disappear. And he becomes increasingly sort of defunct. I don't know, mutilated. But as a metaphor for, things that I've had close-up views of, like chronic illness and degeneration, I don't know, it hit me at a time in my life where it was like really profoundly disturbing and stayed with me for a very long time and still plays a role in my nightmares. So if that sounds like fun to you, head over and watch Looper and watch. I think it is a very fun film, even if it doesn't entirely hang together on the sense-making end of the time travel.
I mean, it is one of those time loop ones where, yeah, it depends. Some people I know have real things about like how they want their time travel to work, whether they want a bootstrap paradox, whether they want like the thing that happened was always going to happen, or influencing in the past has real time impact in the future, if that makes sense. So some people I know, I enjoyed Looper. Some people I know watched Looper and were like, oh, I couldn't deal with it because it isn't my version of time travel that I like, kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm not a picky person like that. I always say I'm a fan, not a snob. I'm happy for people to do it. I think it's also quite good in that you watch Joseph Gordon-Levitt pretending to be a young Bruce Willis. And there's quite an interesting set of acting choices where he's still playing Joseph Gordon-Levitt, but he's sort of starting, as he ages in the film, starting to play Bruce Willis more and more so that it's not a complete shock when you realize that Bruce Willis is the old version of him. And then you see Bruce Willis absolutely refusing to do the same thing in reverse.
I love it. It's 10%, 90%, isn't it? It's like Joseph Gordon-Levitt's doing everything to accommodate that he will one day be Bruce Willis, and Bruce Willis is just being Bruce Willis.
Yeah. I feel like there must be some sort of unspoken, like when there's two big men in a bar, there's like an unspoken communication about who would beat the other one so they don't have to have the fight. I feel like, that conversation just didn't happen between Bruce Willis and Joseph Gordon-Levitt. And Joseph just walked into the room, looked at Bruce Willis and was like, yeah, I'll get a fake nose.
Could you put in contact lenses? No, okay, I'll do the contact lenses.
Never mind. I'll do the contact lenses. Wonderful. So what are your recommendations for body-based body-based science fiction and fantasy. It doesn't need to be horror, but I'm sure you'll bring us some.
Obviously, Together, I did mention, which is sort of the impetus for this, which is very much horror and very good, very fun. It's an emotional kind of film about whether a couple should be together and what the kind of logic of that is. And I think it works very well. Yeah, there's lots of body horror-y, scrungy stuff. It's not, I wouldn't say particularly scary, but it is quite gory, and that is that's the trade-off there. Um, Everyone take a shot because I'm about to recommend a classic Doctor Who story. Um, so I got one for classic, which is The Invisible Enemy, which is from season 15 of Doctor Who. And it's Tom Baker, and it is a proper fantastic voyage, shrunk down and put into your own body kind of story, which is really fun about tackling sort of an evil parasite, which I think takes the form of a giant prawn. It's really weird. It's really fun. It's very trippy. It's not scary at all, and it's not like gross at all. It's just odd in the best possible way for those kind of things. I really enjoyed it. And from, I guess, in inverted commas, New Who, which is increasingly a very strange phrase, I would recommend
Yoo-hoo.
Yoo-hoo! For all that, I would recommend Into the Dalek, which is Peter Capaldi episode about sort of entering the inner workings of a Dalek. Not a human body, but a sort of mechanical hybrid body. I really enjoy both of those. In terms of sort of changing and metamorphosizing bodies as well, I wouldn't recommend, is it the film Tusk? Which is Kevin Smith's film about Justin Long slowly becoming a walrus, which maybe I wouldn't recommend the film, but what I would recommend is the sort of details around the film, because I'm pretty sure Kevin Smith documented from the very first idea, what if this happened, to sort of getting the funding for the film, writing the film, making the film. I think out there, I don't know the name of the podcast, I'm very sorry, but I think out there basically you can chart the sort of the process of making this film from its very first inception to it being created, and then if you want to, you can watch this very weird film at the end of it. But almost that is a form of gestation in itself. So there's a meta kind of body thing going on there, which I really like. So those are my main recommendations. Because like I say, because Together I think does the work of being quite sort of grossy and bloody and everything else. So I wanted to come up with something which is a bit cleaner. So those are my recommendations for that anyway.
Wonderful. I'm going to recommend Altered Carbon,
Oh,
in which consciousnesses get transferred between body sleeves.
mm-hmm.
And the ultra rich keep cloned sleeves on ice, while the poor masses sometimes have to sell their sleeves or let someone kill it with them inside just to pay the bills.
Mm.
Uh, so that's a lot of fun. Somebody in the comments section in the call out recommended the Narnia series, in which Eustace gets turned into a dragon and then basically has to peel all the dragon skin off to uncover himself,
Oh, wow, yeah.
which actually, for a children's book is quite graphically done.
Mm.
I think is pretty amazing. Also, some recommendations for Major in Ghost in the Shell, the robotic body
Mm-hmm.
there, and of course, bringing it back to Duncan Idaho, Dune, and the ways in which the sort of, particularly the second book involves a person becoming a sandworm.
Oh, and of course, if we're doing sort of those kind of the playing with different consciousnesses in different bodies, I mean, anyone listening to this who isn't currently watching Alien Earth at the minute, that's a lot to do with inserting consciousnesses into synthetic bodies and what it means, a lot about what it means to be human, a bit like Ex Machina as well. That plays with a bit of that, which is really fun because yeah, the whole kind of synthetics droid thing in Alien has always been the sort of the B plot of most Alien. The first is obviously massive alien going around killing everyone. The second is like, what does it mean to be human if you have these synthetics around who are basically indistinguishable from living people? So yeah, I've seen 2 episodes of that, and I think it's absolutely exceptional.
And then, of course, going back to classic Blade Runner, always,
Mm.
always wonderful. And then any plot in which there's a disease progression that is bringing urgency to the process, whether that's a poisoned princess, or the hero has made themselves taken some sort of thing, or there's a a classic kind of been poisoned but needs the antidote, and the person who has the antidote is making them do the mission. That's always quite a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Of course, join the conversation and send your recommendations into the comments section over on the Blue Sky, or again over on my Patreon, patreon.com/Alice Fraser. Nice people talking about fun things.
Yay.
Speaking of fun things, that brings us to the Minds of which is where we talk about something that we used to love, but maybe hasn't aged quite so well. Tom, do you have a Minds of for us?
I do. I've gone on a process with a lot of like sort of bad caricaturing of things. When I was younger, when I was like much younger, say like 5, my favorite part of Dumbo was the crows, because I thought the crows were very cool. I thought they seemed fun. They had a community spirit. And then you grow older and you realize that they are crude stereotypes. And similarly, I want to talk mainly about campery in villainy, specifically the campery of things like there's a film called Jupiter Ascending, where I think there's a particularly sort of camp villain. I know that Michael Sheen does it quite well in the Twilight series.
Jupiter Ascending is played by what's his name? The not Paul Bettany redhead.
Yes, Redman.
Yeah, Eddie Redmayne.
Yes, Eddie Redmayne.
Sorry, just as a brief diversion, when we were talking about Justin Gordon-Levitt and then Jason Long, and then I think they all fall into the same camp as, to me, James Franco and then also Shia LaBeouf. Those 4 men are like almost interchangeable in my mind. Just as like a casting in the same way as Eddie Redmayne is just like the rebooted younger version of Paul Bettany.
100%.
And that is entirely unfair to these actors who are all very distinct in the ways that they do their job. But there's some part of my brain that's like, yeah, swapsies.
I always feel like when you watch clips of like people and someone asks like Samuel L. Jackson what it was like being in the Matrix, and he's like, that's Lawrence Fishburne. I always think it slightly redresses the balance when you accept that like there's a subgenre of like, you know, early 40s, late 30s, early 40s white actors who are basically the same. I always think like there's something being redressed there, which I'm quite happy to admit. So yeah, so I'm going to say that like campery to mean villainy has sort of, it's been around for a long time. Lon Chaney did it, and I do love it in a lot of those films, but then you look back and you go, oh, is this queer panic that's going on a lot of the time? Is this something that has kind of its roots somewhere a bit more sinister than just like, isn't it fun that these villains get to be a bit camp? It depends. Obviously, things like Ursula in The Little Mermaid is riffing on Divine, which seems to be quite inclusive in a way, because sort of Divine isn't necessarily sort of is a countercultural figure, and it's kind of embracing that into the mainstream. But at the same time, you're going, isn't this person sinister? So I don't know where I fall on that really. Like, it can be the villain is the best part a lot of the time in these things, and so it's the best part to play. But also, are you equating kind of the otherness of not being manly or not being sort of feminine in that sense, and equating that with evil? I don't know.
I don't know either, but like it is a fascinating thing that particularly Disney villains, which is where it sort of gets brought into most people's understanding of the culture, and pantomime villains, they are often played by gay characters, often by gay actors, often written by gay writers, and they also look like they're having the most fun of all of the characters. Like, you want to be Ursula. You want to, like, I always wanted to be Scar because he's just looking like he has so much fun. And these, I have a soft spot for Sheriff of Nottingham who goes, guards, guards. Like, I love that stuff.
Yeah.
And even though obviously there's stuff in there that's coded and potentially there's an association that's being made about villainy or sinisterness, there's also quite often, not always, but quite often, like an affecting story that tells us why this person has become evil, or why they feel left out, or you feel for them if it's done well.
It dimensionalizes the villain in sort of an effective way. I understand that. Yeah.
So I think it's a very interesting Minds of because these are all things that I would say I still enjoy and I still recommend, but having some consciousness of the fact that they might be, in a broad sense, polluting the conversation about particular kinds of otherness.
Yes. Yes. I think it's basically it like most culture in that sense, when it's in the right hands, it's really fun and when it's sort of being dealt with in good faith. And then the second it's taken out of that and sort of people who aren't in on the culture start using it, then I think it becomes difficult. But that was ever thus, I guess.
It was ever else. When it's being used just as a straight shorthand for something's off here, I think
Yes.
is
Yeah.
where you're
Yeah.
like, oh no good.
Mm.
But where it's, for example, where it's Gary Oldman as the villain in The Fifth Element, who's
Mm.
just having the best time
Yeah.
chewing up the scenery, then why not? Why
Hmm.
not?
How about it?
It looks like most fun. And that brings us to the end of this week's episode of Realms Unknown. A reminder to subscribe to the Bugle channel. All the books we cover here are in the affiliate store. There's a link in the show notes. Of course, head over to the Blue Sky or my Patreon if you want to see the conversation about other people's recommendations in this subgenre that goes deep, 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 deep down into the Marianas Trench of different stories and ways of dealing with bodies in science fiction and fantasy. As well as horror, of course, for this particular subgenre deep dive in speculative fiction. It tends horrorwards. But as for you, brave traveller, take Tom's lead and get yourself out to your local cinema to experience the greatest summer for horror in recent memory, be it Together, Weapons, Bring Her Back, Sinners, if that counts, or if it's still
Oh
out
yeah.
there 28 years later. If you enjoy experiencing nightmares like my own, if that's something you want to do as part of your fandom, then check out Looper and imagine Joseph Gordon-Levitt and or Justin Long just backing down and doing all the hard yards to become Bruce Willis. And for some Doctor Who body horror examples from Tom, check out The Invisible Enemy, a Tom Baker episode from season 15, or Into the Dalek, to journey into a Dalek's inner workings. Tom, have you got anything to plug?
By now, your listeners must know Tom Neenan art on Etsy. I occasionally put things up on there, or TP Neenan on Instagram. I put up paintings and things, and yeah, just a like and a recommendation, and would go a long way to, I'm sure, some mighty algorithm that gets me in people's faces, and also my own sense of self-worth. So that's free and will make me feel lovely.
Yes, the algorithms are currently being reshuffled under our very feet, like one of those terribly loaded games of musical chairs where if you end up on the wrong chair, some spikes come down from the ceiling. So if there is anyone you enjoy, any artist of any kind whose work you enjoy, retweet them, give them a like, give them a boost in the algorithm, give them a bit of love in order to spread the word for what they do. It's a way of supporting people, even if you can't financially support. You can find me online at patreon.com/Alice Fraser. I'm also in Edinburgh. If you're in Edinburgh, my show is at 6:50 every night at Underbelly Bristow Square. And on Sunday morning at 10:30 a.m. at the Black Medicine Coffee Shop, I'm doing a writer's workshop. Just come along and I'll help you do some writing. If you're in Edinburgh and being inspired by all of the incredible stuff that you're watching, if you're in Edinburgh and sick of your show, if you are in Edinburgh and just want to have a coffee with me, it's at 10:30 at the Black Medicine Coffee Co. And then, of course, my show, 6:50 Underbelly Bristow Square, and my Patreon, patreon.com/Alice Fraser. This is a Bugle podcast and Alice Fraser production. Your editor is Ped Hunter. Your executive producer is Chris Skinner. I'll talk to you again next week.